What is going on, guys? We are back with another video today, and we are kind of talking about Madden 21-ish. Obviously, we don't know the official ratings and all that, but we have a decent idea, and we're going to go into my quote-unquote top 10 teams, I think, that are good to start a franchise with on Madden 21. Of course, I'm not going to actually do a top 10, like, oh, here's number 10, here's number 9. I'm just going to say the top 10 teams, and they're probably going to be in the most random order. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but it should be pretty obvious that most of these teams are going to be on the worst side because there's really no point in taking a team like the Ravens or the Chiefs and play. I mean, you could play with them if you want, but they don't really need any help. You know, I'm not even sure why we chose the Niners last year in Madden. Like, we knew there was a very good chance they'd be decent, and I didn't know their ratings were going to be that high. I think they started the year at like a top 10 team, but terrible. Nowhere near that good of a team we're going to be choosing. And of course, there probably should be a poll up already about which teams we're going to be choosing. So vote on that if you haven't. And maybe this Friday we'll have a franchise teams unveiling. Anyways, if you guys like these types of videos, maybe leave a like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Enough is enough, right? Now, here's see, that's the thing. I don't know how to rank these anyway, so I'm not going to. But one of my teams, obviously, is the Jaguars, because as far as Madden goes, you know, once again, these are Madden 20 rosters. You obviously know that, I would imagine. It's not going to be a team that is very easy to rebuild. You look at this team, there are some younger players. You know, we don't know who's going to make the 53-man roster, so you could wait until closer to Madden 21. You know, that's the kind of decent thing about the game coming out a little bit later this year, is that it will be more representative of their real-life roster, most likely, so you can kind of have a better idea of who's going to be on the team. But as far as the league goes, the Jaguars in Madden, at least, in Madden, might have the worst roster. Now, it's not terrible. You got Miles Jack. You have guys like Ngakoue. You know, you probably will have to re-sign him because he's only on a tag. Josh Allen. There are some names, but as far as what this team has, it's not super great. You know, your quarterback situation's iffy. Tight ends rough. Wide receivers not terrible, because Chark, you know, he kind of came along in real life, and you know, he's actually very young, very fast still, and obviously tall. They've got a couple of wide receivers. It's not the worst team in the world, right? But it might be for talent in the NFL. So as far as, you know, what team is probably the hardest to rebuild, it probably will be the Jaguars, which is why they definitely are one of my 10 teams to rebuild. And hell, they might even be, I can't remember what the poll list was, but they could be on my list, because right now I'm recording this before I post the poll, because I'm not exactly sure which 5 teams I want to put on the poll, but I would assume all of those teams will be in this video. Will the Jaguars, though? I don't know about that now. Now, for the next team, you have another team with a 70 overall quarterback, at least in Madden 20, and that's the Broncos. Of course, a team definitely on the come up a little bit on the offensive side after this offseason. You know, they have Noah Fant. I don't know what his development's probably going to be the lowest dev you can have, but he's still young, very fast, obviously. You have Cortland Sutton that kind of came on strong. They have KJ Hamler, and then, of course, Jerry Jeudy, who was a very good draft pick. Their offense definitely has some potential. They have Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. I don't know who you'd want to start. It's a very tough decision between the two. Probably Phillip. I don't know. And then Drew Lock, he's okay. He's definitely usable and developable, but I don't know. You might need to go for a new QB. As far as the offensive line goes, nothing too impressive there. Looking at the defensive side, they did add some names in the offseason, but they also did lose some names at the cornerback position. Specifically, they lost Chris Harris Jr. So, I mean, this is a team that does have a few decent pieces. You know, you still have Von Miller, and then Chubb is, of course, very developable, but middle linebacker is a bit of an issue. D-line in general, you know, outside of Von and Chubb, which does, I mean, it's kind of the D-line, right? But yeah, the Broncos are a very good team. You know, they have pieces, but they still have a decent bit of ways to go. So the big thing that, you know, plays in a factor for this, which will not, you know, we won't all know until after we already start our franchises, is what is going to be the most common thing in the draft. You know, this last Madden, DT was very common. What is it called? The O-line was pretty easy to get as well. But you look at the position of the tight end, That was a tough position to get in Madden last year. Probably going to be one that'll be a little bit easier because we usually do see some pretty high projected tight ends almost every year now in the NFL. So maybe, but at least you got Noah Fant. So as far as teams to rebuild, this one, yeah, I mean, this is one that might actually be very high on my personal list. I know it was last year. Like I said, no specific order, but the Bengals. This is one of those teams that definitely gives the Jaguars a run for their money when it comes to worst roster in the league. Andy Dalton, I don't believe, is a cap issue, right? I think they can get rid of him anytime and, save money, actually. But you get Joe Burrow, who's very likely to start out with superstar development out the gate, or whatever the second highest development is, unless they go back to a proper, 4-prong I don't know, dude. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. But yeah, Joe Burrow, pretty high development, most likely. You have Joe Mixon, who's still very young and very good. So you have a little bit of fun there. But this is where a little bit of the issues come from. You got guys that you have to try to develop. There are some good wide receivers here. It's just some of them are on the slower side outside of John Ross. AJ Green likely to be gone soon-ish. He will have low injury as well. So if you play with your injuries on, you're definitely going to, most likely going to see him on the sideline a few times, right? What's his injury in Madden 20 at least? 84 injury, which, for a superstar player, that's pretty low. I mean, we've seen, I hate bringing up Ryan Shazier, but we've seen Ryan Shazier at 80 injury and all that, so, and some other really injury, like Sean Lee was never lower than 73 injury, I think, and I don't know if he's ever had a season where he wasn't injured, so 84 is pretty low in that regard. You still have John Ross, a very developable guy because he's so fast, so you do have that burner, but pretty much this is a possession team for the most part. Tight end, a little bit of an issue, like we said last year. Well, this Madden, not an easy position to draft, so, might be a little worrisome there, which, makes it challenging. O-line, don't even want to talk about it. It's rough. You do have Carl Lawson as an edge rusher, and I think they gave up on Willis, right? He's somewhere else now. D-line, I mean, you look at this team, there's a lot of holes on this team. Linebacker has been an issue for them for, I don't know how long. I'm trying to think of the last time they had a good linebacker. Perfect, kinda? Kinda? Yeah, the Bengals debatably might have the worst roster in the league, which, kind of makes sense reflecting this past draft. And Joe Burrow, I believe, is 23, 24 in real life. So the Bengals might be the worst roster right out the gate. So if you want to challenge, this team or that Jaguars team is definitely the one, which I'd say the Bengals are very high on my list. And now a team that could actually surprise people in real life is the Lions. They had a very good offseason. Matthew Stafford has always been tinkering as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He just puts up numbers. Rushing, you got DeAndre Swift, you got Kerryon Johnson. There's no issue at running back at all, even though the amount of backs they have would make you think otherwise. Looking at the wide receiver position, there is a little bit of age there, I will admit. Kenny Golladay is their best option for sure. Marvin Jones, a guy you have to replace soonish. Amendola, definitely. And then the rest, they aren't one of the best teams in the league for receiver, but you do have that good tight end, like we said, with TJ Hawkinson. O-line, a little bit of an issue there. They had a couple of good pieces, and they lost them recently, and then they replaced their right tackle with Vaitai, who they paid $10 million per year, which is brutal, but they did. And then looking at the D-line, it's not terrible. Deshaun Hand's a young developable piece. I would say probably will start with normal, though. And then Trey Flowers didn't have the year they were expecting, but they did go for Julian Okwara, so you could just move Hand to DT and then put Okwara on the edge. And then with DT, like we were just saying, Danny Shelton, and then number 2, you can put Deshaun Hand there, like we literally just mentioned it. Coverage linebacker, quite a bit of an issue. You do have Ty Vi, who's he's younger, but linebacker is one of the first things you're probably going to draft. And then, of course, we all know they drafted Jeff Okudah. They have Trufant to try and fill that void with Slay. They did all right in the offseason. Considering you lost Slay, the cornerback position is pretty... you might even make an argument outside of potential injuries. It might be a better cornerback squad than they had last year. And then safety, you do have Tracy Walker, but the rest definitely replaceable. But, the Lions team, they're a team you would think is going to be bad coming into the next season, but they might surprise you. I'm telling you, that NFC North is super competitive. There might be no teams under 8 wins come in this season. It would not surprise me. Now we have a team that has been bad for quite a while now, but they are in a division that is semi-winnable. I will say that, the Bills and Patriots, we really don't know what we're going to see from them next year. I would say the Bills are the front runners, but with Cam, if he plays and he's, healthy, I'd probably put the Patriots at number 1 again. Sam Darnold, this is going to be an interesting one. I think he's probably going to start with the lowest dev in the game, and all these things do matter because obviously, if it's the same as last year, you can only dev up your QB by winning awards / having that threshold season, the 3,800, 35-plus touchdown kind of situation. Le'Veon Bell, of course, a guy not being paid too much, but he is on the older side. He'll, be 28-ish in the next game. Looking at wide receivers, they did go for Denzel Mims. They added Brashad Perriman, and then they already had Jamison Crowder, so a little bit of an issue at wide receiver, but they do have some developable pieces like, Mims, probably going to be your number 2 wide receiver. And then tight end, Herndon, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone develop him, even though it would be interesting because he is kind of young. He's kind of all right. But yeah, tight end, probably a position you need to replace. They go for Mekhi Becton, which was kind of a steal. Outside of Mekhi, though, that offensive line's a little rough because Brian Winters, he's not young at all. Honestly, we keep doing this, but especially with that Mosley contract, you might make the argument that the Jets could be the worst team, especially when you have to pay Adams as well if you don't want to lose him. I'm gonna put the Jets as the worst team, the Bengals as the second worst team, and the Jags as the third worst team, which in this case, if you're trying to challenge yourself, would make the Jets the best team to choose. I don't know if I want to challenge myself that much, though, so I might skip them. Now, of course, a very hot commodity in the Raiders, of course. Are they going to have the Las Vegas Stadium? They're playing there next year, right? If there is a next season, I don't even know. But you have Derek Carr, whose contract probably is lessened. You could probably get rid of him soon-ish, I would imagine. And you do have Mariota. I think it's a little too late to develop him, even though he has a special place in my heart for this past Titans franchise we had. And then, of course, you have Josh Jacobs, who is kind of underrated in that speed department, but an absolute beast in real life. A fun player for sure. Now, wide receiver, outside of Ruggs, a little troublesome. Of course, this roster we always use, they have Bryan Edwards a little low, so he might be better than that. But Ruggs pretty much becomes your number 1. Hunter Renfrow, kind of a decent slot possession guy. I would just put Henry Ruggs at number 1 and just chuck it up to him. Of course, you have Darren Waller on a decently favorable contract considering how decent he is. I would say decent because he's really good in real life, and in Madden, with that age, he's pretty good. But, that age does worry me. If he's not in the 90s, which he should be, that age will come into play. And then they have some other backup tight ends. Witten to the Raiders really, kind of surprised me. Offensive line, the Raiders used to have the best line in Madden, and that kind of went away a little bit. Trent Brown, a super tank, should actually play this year. Max Crosby, the surprise of their draft with Clelin Ferrell, kind of disappointing, but even though he will have a low dev, hopefully Max Crosby will have a decent dev. You still have Mo Hurst. You have some other DTs that they signed in offseason. As far as linebacker goes, once again, another issue there. Cornerback, they did take Damon Arnett pretty high, so his dev could be decent. And then safety is a little worrisome. So very close to that bottom of the list in talent. I would say Madden ratings, they could be a bottom 5 team. And once again, that location, the name might be intriguing to some people, which I suppose it is to me as well. And of course, those uniforms. Whew. Now, for the last couple of teams, some of my favorite teams, the Panthers aren't really one of my favorite teams, but I do like some of their players. The problem with them is, do you really want Teddy Bridgewater? That's the issue. Of course, you do have PJ Walker. If you want that XFL feel, I suppose. But Teddy Bridgewater, his contract is a little rough. It's hard to get away from that. McCaffrey, in Madden-wise, his abilities have kind of been pretty trash, even though he's one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best, last year going into this year. Those abilities, though, it's like receiving back stuff. It's just give me jukebox, let me crush the league, But as far as wide receivers go, obviously, they are looking to trade Curtis Samuel in real life, but if they even do get a trade-off, I'd imagine he'll end up still being on their roster, but obviously you're probably going to want to make it realistic for yourself. But if they don't trade him, they have a very underrated receiving group, which is kind of ironic coming from Cam never having options, and finally they add someone in Robbie Anderson. Of course, tight end, a huge issue there for the first time in some time. O-line, meh. That's kind of the reason why Cam got hurt so often. Well, maybe not so often, but the reason why he got hurt. That O-line is kind of rough. They're really the best part of them was their guards for so many years. I don't get the trade to Seattle for Okung. That just made no sense. Huge win for... No, it wasn't Seattle. It was the Chargers, wasn't it? I think it was the Chargers. I don't know. Whoever traded him, terrible. I mean, a good decision, trade Okung off, but they should not have made that trade. Try Turner was way better. Looking at the defensive ends now, this is where it kind of shines for the Panthers, the D-line. Brian Burns should have a decent dev. Gross Matos, I mean, I don't even know. He's going to start. I don't know the dev, though. And then looking at DT, Derek Brown should be a superstar. If he isn't, I'd be surprised. Quan Short is a little on the older side, though. Of course, if the Panthers still had Luke Kuechly, this would be a pretty okay linebacking group. Once again, as with pretty much all these teams we've showcased, linebacker's a bit of an issue. Cornerback, you have Dante Jackson, the speed demon, maybe the fastest DB in the league. But that's pretty much it. And, of course, Trey Boston, Jeremy Chin. I don't even know who the hell that is, but maybe he'll be all right. I don't know. And then, of course, if Joey Sly's still on the roster, which I don't know if he is he going to be on their roster? He started with the Colts, right? No, he didn't start with the Colts. He started with the Panthers. I thought they released them, though. I don't know. But if they have Joey Sly, that's a big booming leg to have your kicking with, I suppose. Special teams do kind of matter. Now, here are my final three teams that I think are up there for my favorites. The Redskins, who could potentially be the best team out of this bunch. Of course, Dwayne Haskins likely to be the lowest overall player. The question is, what is Alex Smith's contract situation? I think they're still paying him, right? Even though he's injured? I don't know how that works. As far as running back goes, if Geis is still being believed upon by EA, he'll be a great running back to use. And of course, you do have Bryce Love as the backup, who could definitely become a starter. Peterson's kind of a novelty guy who will be pretty much retired after the first season. But, I mean, he's still there if you want to use him. Wide receiver, not super great outside of Scary Terry, but you got some, workable pieces. Like if Emmanuel Hall is actually on their roster, that's a guy you could use because he's fast and tall. Tight end, I don't even want to talk about it. They got a former quarterback as one of their highest rated tight ends, so there you go. Thaddeus Moss, I think, was a bit of a steal, though. Did they lose? What's his name? I can't remember what happened to him. Yeah, offensive line, kind of a meh outside of like one or two guys. D-line, though, Chase Young, obviously they had to take him, but with some of the names they have, it was a little surprising. Not surprising, but like, I don't know. They just have so many players that are good on the D-line. You have Ryan Kerrigan, who's on the older side, obviously. Chase Young, who's obviously going to be the highest, I would say, the highest overall rookie from the class. Montez Sweat, super fast, developable, of course, because he's young. And then you have three DTs you could probably trade off. Jonathan Allen, I would say, would be the guy you would want to trade off. Probably get someone decent, maybe a linebacker. This team does have a couple of, usable guys. Holcomb's fast, and of course Reuben Foster if he's developable, but that age is going to be a little bit of a problem at linebacker. As far as DB goes, Kendall Fuller, Ronald Darby, Moreau, some really good names here you could actually use. So like I said, and of course you have Troy Apke, the White Lightning. Could start him with Landon Collins. It's a really solid team, but it obviously still does need work with Dwayne being a low overall. We don't know the running back overall situation, and then wide receiver tight end is hugely lacking. Of course, so is that line. So you're really just looking at the defensive line, the pass rush being really good for the Redskins. The defense is pretty underrated. Now, for a team I think people are sleeping on in Madden at least, I think in real life, I don't know how they're going to play, but in Madden, they've got some names. If these ratings are even close to what they are here for Madden 21, this could be a really good team to use. Daniel Jones, of course, kind of came on a little bit. Danny Dimes, I don't know what the development's going to be there, but he might be usable, I suppose. Looking at running back, of course, Saquon Barkley, one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best, considering what he's working with for that offensive line. Looking at the receivers, you do have Slayton. Shepard kind of is getting on that older side, and then Golden Tate. I love Golden Tate as a player, but of course his overall and his age not going to be great for your user league. or your not user league, for your franchise. And then tight end, of course, Evan Ingram always gets a ton of love in Madden, so he should be one of the best tight ends because of how damn fast he is. Super mismatched. Left tackle Andrew Thomas should be, star development, very high overall. Will Hernandez, if they give him some love, he should be decent. Zietler. And then, of course, don't they have, Nate Solder, so I don't know what his overall is going to be. But, I mean, they're a very developable team. I mean, look, they got Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence. I think the Dexter Lawrence draft pick was still a little questionable, but you have that. It would have been nice to see them go Isaiah Simmons. That would have made this team really fun. Blake Martinez is a rough one. They basically are the New York Packers here. Kyler Fackrell, Jimenez. There are some questions specifically on the defense, which is crazy to think because the Giants, they were such a dominant force on defense for so long. But Jabril Peppers, you can maybe slide him down a corner, start Julian Love and Xavier McKinney. Then you would have James Bradbury, DeAndre Baker, and Jabril Peppers. But overall, this is, one of my favorite teams to try and, user/rebuild. So one's for Bengal, using them all the time because he's a Giants fan. I would actually probably put them on my list, maybe even use them, but we're not going to do that. And now even though I said I wasn't making a list, for one of my favorite teams, I think, for, starting a franchise, it's the Dolphins. Of course, Tua Tagovailoa is going to be a big name, and he's going to be fun to use. You have Matt Breida. I love me some Matt Breida. Jordan Howard, Kalen Ballage could be a fun player to use. Maybe trade off Howard, use Ballage if you want to power back. As far as receivers go, this is why you choose them. They are a bit lacking at wide receiver. Devontae Parker kind of came on strong late, basically last second. Everyone was like, ooh, that's not a good pick. And he kind of came out of nowhere. He was super up and down for a while and finally showed up. Mike Gesicki, apparently this overall says that he showed up. I don't remember him being decent at all. Of course, they did have those 3 first-round draft picks. Tried to do what they could with the line. I will say that that trade to the Texans was definitely one of the best moves in recent Dolphins history. They pretty much signed a ton of names that at one point, either were sought-after players or super high potential guys, and they're just going to try to roll the dice. Of course, as far as linebacker goes, they got a couple of fast guys you could definitely use her. Then you also do have Kyle Vanoy. I don't really like that contract, but here you go. And then speaking of contracts that I don't kind of like, Byron Jones, it's a good contract considering how decent, how good he's probably going to be. And then Xavier Howard, kind of overrated in real life, but, because of those picks from that one season, his dev was high here. I think the Dolphins did all right for the offseason, and there are some big questions, but definitely some pieces you can develop and potentially turn this team into a solid one, but it'll take a few years, which is why, like I said, this is going to be high on my list. Might even be the team, depending on what the poll states. But as far as out-of-breath simulator goes for the day, like I did this all in one take and didn't take any breaks, that's my top 10, it might have been 11 teams to use/rebuild in Madden 21. If you guys like this video, like I said in the beginning, if you like videos like these, maybe leave a like and subscribe. Maybe we'll do something like this again. I don't know exactly what. Also, let me know if you guys want to see any tier list videos. Of course, keep a lookout. I would assume Friday for my actual selection of our franchises. We already have one of them done, and then this one probably going to be based on the polls. It's not going to be a guarantee, but influenced by the polls, I would say. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you come back for next video. But until next video, see ya!